The Gulfstream G650 jet bearing the presidential seal of the Republic of Zambezi cut through the evening sky, beginning its descent toward Malbu International Airport inside President Gabriel. Nyambe sat alone in the luxury cabin, gazing out at the sprawling city lights below his capital, his country. Yet somehow not truly his. The Davos trip had gone exactly as planned. His speech to the World Economic Forum had received standing ovations from Western business leaders and politicians. Zambezi, Africa's new investment frontier, a presentation. He had neither written nor fully believed in outlining policies he had not chosen 20 minutes to landing. Mr. President, his chief of staff announced, entering the cabin with a tablet. I've prepared a summary of the commitments made during the forum. Nyambe nodded, scanning the document. New mining concessions for European corporations. Privatization of the national water utility tax breaks for foreign investors. Reduction in public spending. All presented as pathways to prosperity, yet all somehow transferring Zambezi's wealth outward rather than inward. The French Foreign Minister was particularly pleased with your presentation, continued the Chief of Staff. He mentioned that President Macron wants to schedule a state visit to discuss expanding their military presence in the northern provinces. More troops on our soil, Nyambe said quietly, to protect us from threats they identify. Sir, nothing. Thomas, thank you for the report. As the jet touched down, Nyambe prepared for the usual choreography of his return, the honor guard, the press statements, the carefully managed appearance of a strong, independent African leader. In reality, he hadn't made a significant decision without Western approval. In his 6 years as president, the motorcade wound through the wide colonial avenues of Mobutu, past the mix of gleaming new corporate headquarters and sprawling settlements, where most citizens lived in poverty despite Zambi's vast diamond wealth. The contrast had once bothered Nyambe, but he had learned to look past it, to focus on the development indicators. His economic advisors emphasized GDP growth, foreign investment figures, international credit ratings at the presidential palace. Henry Davao, his French security advisor, waited with the evening briefing. Welcome back, Mr. President, Davao said with practiced deference. A few matters require your attention first. The IMF delegation has submitted their quarterly review with recommended policy adjustments. They're requesting your signature by tomorrow. Nyambe accepted the thick document without opening it. He knew what it contained. More austerity measures, more concessions to foreign interests, more compromises of sovereignty in exchange for continued financial support. Also, Davao continued, there's been increased activity from opposition groups in the eastern provinces. Nothing serious, but we recommend postponing your planned visit to the region. These are my citizens. Henry, I should hear their concerns. Davao smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Mr. President. However, our intelligence suggests foreign agitators may be involved. The French counterterrorism unit can handle the investigation. Foreign agitators. Nyambe repeated the term was used so often to dismiss legitimate grievances, complaints about pollution from foreign-owned mines, protests over water privatization, demands for better revenue sharing from the country's resources. There's one more thing, Davao said, his tone shifting slightly. Our monitoring systems detected unusual diplomatic activity between Burkina Faso and Mali this morning. Nothing concrete yet, but given Traoré's recent resource nationalism policies, we should remain vigilant. Ibrahim Traoré, the name alone made Western advisors uncomfortable. The young leader of neighboring Burkina Faso had become an irritant to European and American interests since taking power, nationalizing gold mines, expelling foreign military bases, establishing resource-sharing agreements with other African nations. Keep me informed, Nyambe said noncommittally later that night, alone in his private quarters. Nyambe poured himself a glass of scotch, an expensive brand favored by the British colonial administrators who had once governed these lands. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed with a notification, a message from an unknown number. Mr. President, a diplomatic representative from Burkina Faso requests a confidential audience tomorrow. This matter concerns both our nation's sovereignty for security reasons. This request is being delivered outside official channels. Nyambe stared at the message any communication with. Traoré's government was automatically flagged by his Western advisors. Meetings were discouraged, official cooperation, minimal. Burkina Faso represented a model of African independence that threatened Western interests that kept Nyambe in power before he could decide how to respond. His phone buzzed. Again, the same unknown number. The representative will arrive at your private residence at 9 a.m., disguised as maintenance personnel. Your staff has been informed of scheduled repairs. Only accept or reject with a single word reply. Nyambe hesitated, his finger hovering over the keyboard. Every instinct of self-preservation told him to reject the meeting, report the communication to Davao. Yet something else, perhaps the remnants of the idealistic young man who had once dreamed of truly serving his people, made him type a single word. Except sleep eluded him that night. He lay awake, thinking about the divergent paths of Zambia and Burkina Faso. Nations with similar colonial histories, but very different presents. Both had abundant natural resources. Both had gained independence in the same era. Yet while Zambia remained firmly under Western influence, with poverty persisting despite vast diamond wealth, Burkina Faso was charting an independent course that had Western powers scrambling to maintain control in the region. The next morning, precisely at 9 a.m., a maintenance worker was escorted to the president's private residence. Once the door closed, the man revealed himself as Ousmane Sankara, Burkina Faso's deputy foreign minister. "Thank you for receiving me, President Nyambe," Sankara said, removing the worker's cap. "President Traoré sends his highest regards. This meeting is a regular minister, Sankara." Nyambe replied cautiously, "Our countries maintain official diplomatic channels monitored by your French advisors." Sankara observed, "President Traoré believes what he has to propose requires absolute confidentiality. And what exactly is he proposing? A private meeting? Just the two presidents, no advisors, no security details, no diplomatic entourage, at the hunting lodge on our shared border 3 days from now?" And why surprise must have shown on his face. "We understand this is unusual," Sankara continued, "but President Traoré believes the future of African sovereignty depends on leaders being able to speak freely without Western supervision. What would be the agenda for such a meeting? That is for the two presidents to determine, but I am authorized to tell you that President Traoré has information vital to Zambia's security and your personal position." Before Nyambe could inquire further, his secure phone rang, the line used only by his closest staff. "Excuse me," he said to Sankara. "Answering the call, Mr. President," came the urgent voice of his personal secretary. "Mr. Davao is on his way to your residence. He says it's a security matter requiring immediate attention." Nyambe looked at Sankara, who had already heard and was replacing his disguise. "I'll leave through the garden," the Burkinabe minister said quietly. "President Traoré will be at the lodge at noon. 3 days from now, your presence would be an honor, but he understands if circumstances prevent it." After Sankara's discreet departure, Nyambe had barely composed himself when Davao arrived, accompanied by 2 French intelligence officers. "Mr. President, we've detected unusual communications from the Burkinabe embassy," Davao announced without preamble. "Our analysts believe they may be attempting to establish unauthorized contact with your government." The directness of the surveillance admission was jarring. They weren't even pretending to respect Zambia's sovereignty. "Any more? Have they breached any diplomatic protocols?" Nyambe asked, maintaining a neutral expression. "Not technically, but given Traoré's destabilizing influence in the region, any communication should be monitored carefully." Davao studied Nyambe's face. "Has anyone from their embassy attempted to contact you directly?" "No." Nyambe lied, surprised at how easily it came. "But I would expect to be informed about diplomatic communications without French intelligence vetting them first. This is still an..." Independent nation Henry something flickered across Diva's face, surprised perhaps at the mild assertion of authority, of course. Mr. President, we're merely providing security support as outlined in our bilateral agreements after Diva left Nyambe. Sat heavily in his chair, contemplating the decision before him meeting. Traoré would jeopardize his relationship with the Western powers that sustained his government. Not meeting him might mean missing vital information about threats to his position. His contemplation was interrupted by another message from the unknown number. The West's most reliable African leader just had a secret meeting with Ibrahim Traoré. After the meeting, the world balance changed forever. The message was accompanied by a link to an encrypted file. Nyambe stared at it, confused. The message spoke of a meeting as if it had already happened. A meeting he hadn't yet agreed to attend that evening in the secure privacy of his bathroom, with the shower running to mask any conversation. Nyambe opened the encrypted file on his personal tablet. It contained 3 items: an audio recording, a document, and a video file. The audio recording was a conversation between Nyambe and someone speaking French with a Parisian accent, dated just 2 days earlier. "Nyambe has been our most reliable asset in the region," said the unknown voice. "The mining concessions alone have saved our corporations billions." "He's becoming restless," replied Davao, asking questions about mining revenues, the military base expansion. "Then perhaps it's time to consider alternatives, General. Mina has always been ambitious. The timing would be delicate. We need the new diamond concessions secured first. Can you maintain control until then? Of course, Nyambe trusts me completely. He doesn't make a move without our guidance." Nyambe's hands trembled as he opened the document. It was a confidential agreement between the French government and several multinational corporations outlining a strategy for maintaining control over Zambesi's resources. His name appeared, repeatedly described as "our man in Mobutu" and a reliable facilitator. Most disturbing was a section titled "Contingency Planning" that detailed the process for transitioning power should he become problematic. The video was footage from a meeting he wasn't supposed to know about. Western diplomats and corporate executives discussing how to manage him. A French official was speaking. "Is useful for now, but we need to be prepared. If he develops nationalist tendencies like Traoré, the general understands our interests and would ensure continuity." The General Mena, his defense minister, appointed on strong recommendation from the French. 4 hours, Nyambe sat motionless, absorbing the reality of his position. He had always known he was supported by Western powers, but he had told himself it was a partnership, a pragmatic relationship benefiting Zambesi. Now he saw the truth. He wasn't a leader, but a caretaker, ensuring his country's wealth flowed outward while poverty remained at home. Even worse, he was expendable, to be replaced when no longer compliant by dawn. He had made his decision. He would meet Traoré. The border between Burkina Faso and Zambesi ran through sparse, arid land where few people lived. A small hunting lodge, built during colonial times, stood as the only significant structure for miles to reach it. Without alerting his security detail, required elaborate planning. Nyambe announced a personal day at his country residence, something he occasionally did to escape the pressures of office. His security team would remain at the perimeter while he spent time alone. From there, he slipped out through a rarely used service entrance where a loyal childhood friend waited with a nondescript vehicle. The drive to the border took 3 hours through increasingly remote terrain. Nyambe used the time to reflect on his presidency. 6 years of compromises, of reading speeches written by others, of signing agreements that benefited foreign interests while his people remained in poverty. When had he lost his way? Perhaps it had been gradual. The comfort of power, the rationale that pragmatic cooperation with Western powers was the only realistic path. Perhaps it had been fear, seeing what happened to African leaders who defied those powers, who ended up overthrown or assassinated. As he approached the hunting lodge, he saw another vehicle already parked there, simple and unmarked, nothing that would identify its occupant as the president of a neighboring nation, Ibrahim Traoré was younger than Nyambe had expected, dressed simply in military faitings, without insignia or decoration, no red beret today. Nothing to mark him as the revolutionary leader who had defied Western powers and nationalized his country's resources. President Ibrahim Traoré said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming, President Traoré." Nyambe replied, shaking the offered hand. "I believe you have some explaining to do." The message. The file's Traoré's expression remained neutral. "Let's talk inside." The hunting lodge was basic, but private, no electronics. No possibility of surveillance, just two men theoretically equals, but worlds apart in how they governed. "I didn't send you any message or files," Traoré said once they were seated, "though I'm curious what they contained." Nyambe studied him for signs of deception, but found none. "Then, who did I have some ideas?" Traoré replied, "But first tell me why you came. You could have ignored my invitation. Your Western friends would certainly have preferred that." Nyambe hesitated, then decided on honesty. "The file showed me what I already suspected, that I'm not really in control of my country, that decisions are made in Paris and Washington, not Mobu." Traoré nodded. "And how does that make you feel?" President Nyambe. The question was simple, but struck at something deep. No one had asked about his feelings in years. Certainly not his Western advisors, who presented him with policies to announce and agreements to sign without concern for his opinion. "It makes me feel," Nyambe searched for the right word, hollow-like. "I'm playing a role in someone else's story." "I know that feeling," Traoré said quietly. "Before I took power, I watched my predecessors follow the same script: open our resources to foreign exploitation, accept unfavorable loans, allow foreign military bases on our soil, all while our people remained poor." "But you changed the script," Nyambe observed. "Yes, and they tried to kill me for it. 3 assassination attempts, to coup plots, economic sanctions, banking restrictions." Traoré leaned forward. "Yet here we are, 1 year later. Our gold is ours, our decisions are ours, and despite Western predictions of collapse, our economy is growing." Nyambe felt a mixture of admiration and skepticism. Burkina Faso and Zambia are different countries with different circumstances. What worked for you could be disastrous for us, perhaps. Traoré acknowledged, but there is something universal about dignity, about sovereignty. Your country has the largest diamond reserves in Africa, yet your people are among the poorest. Does that equation make sense to you? Before Nyambe could respond, Traoré reached into his pocket and removed a small device. "This is why I asked to meet you," he said, placing it on the table between them. "It contains proof that your defense minister, General Muna, is planning a coup with French support. They've decided you're becoming too curious, too questioning. The operation is scheduled for next week." The device projected holographic images, communications between General Muna and French military officials, bank transfers, operational plans. The coup was real, meticulously planned, and had every chance of succeeding. "Why would you share this with me?" Nyambe asked. "Our countries are not allies, because Africa doesn't need more coups orchestrated by foreign powers." Traoré replied, "Because despite our differences, you and I share something. We are both Africans living with the legacy of colonialism that never truly ended, just changed form." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The West maintains control by keeping us divided, competing for their approval, their investments, their protection. But when African nations stand together, that control begins to crumble." "If I move against Makona," Nyambe said, thinking aloud, "I'll face the full opposition of those who placed me in power." "Yes," Traoré agreed. "They will cut economic ties, freeze assets, support opposition groups, perhaps even attempt military intervention." "How did you survive it?" "By understanding that their power relies on isolation. They want African nations competing against each other, but when we stand together, is that why you really invited me?" Here Nyambe asked, "To propose an alliance." "I invited you because I recognized something in you, the same dissatisfaction I felt before taking action, the same question keeping you awake at night. Am I truly serving my people, or am I serving those who exploit them?" Nyambe couldn't deny the Accuracy of Traoré's assessment, those exact thoughts, had haunted him. For months, what exactly are you proposing? He asked a new economic alliance. Traoré said Burkina Faso, Zambezi, and any other African nation willing to prioritize sovereignty over foreign approval. Joint resource development, shared technical expertise, mutual defense agreements. The West would never allow it. Nyambe said automatically allow. Traoré repeated that word itself reveals the problem. Why should independent nations need permission to cooperate with each other? The question hung in the air between them. Nyambe had no answer. I'm not asking for an immediate decision. Traoré continued. Deal with the coup threat first. But know this, when you choose to stand up, you won't stand alone. As they prepared to leave, Nyambe asked the question that had been bothering him: if you didn't send those files, who did? There are patriots everywhere, Traoré replied cryptically, even in the institutions most loyal to foreign interests. The return journey gave Nyambe time to plan his response to the coup threat. By the time he reached the presidential palace, he had formulated a strategy, one that would require courage and precision. Over the next 3 days, he quietly reached out to military officers he personally trusted, sharing carefully selected evidence of the plot. He contacted the head of the National Police, a career professional with no strong ties to foreign powers. Most crucially, he spoke with his wife, Amara, who had always been his most astute political advisor before Western voices had pushed her aside. You've known all along, haven't you? Asked her about how I've been used. I've watched you disappear. She replied softly, the man I married, the one who wanted to build a Zambezi that served its people, faded away year by year. Why didn't you say anything? I did, Gabriel, for years. But you stopped listening. She took his hand. What changed? He told her everything: the meeting with Traoré, the evidence of the coup, the years of manipulation. So what will you do now? She asked. When he finished, what I should have done years ago. Lead on the 4th day. Nyambe made his move in a carefully orchestrated operation. Loyal military units arrested General Mokoena and 6 other conspirators. The evidence was presented publicly, undeniable proof of a foreign-backed coup plot. The international backlash was immediate. The French government expressed grave concerns about due process. The IMF announced a review of loan agreements. Western media questioned Nyambe's stability and judgment, but something unexpected happened domestically for the first time in his presidency. People rallied in support of Nyambe. The evidence of foreign interference had struck a chord with a population tired of seeing their country's wealth benefit others. 1 week after the arrests, Nyambe addressed the nation in a speech unlike any he had given before, a speech written in his own words, not those of Western advisors. Citizens of Zambezi, he began, for too long, I have led our nation according to others' expectations rather than our own needs. I have signed agreements that benefited foreign corporations while our people remained in poverty. I have allowed our sovereignty to be compromised in the name of international relations. He paused, feeling the weight of the moment that ends today. I am announcing a comprehensive review of all mining contracts, all military agreements, all loan conditions. Any terms that do not serve the interests of Zambia will be renegotiated or terminated. The speech continued, outlining specific policies. A minimum 51% national ownership of all mining operations, redirection of resource revenues to education and healthcare, revision of foreign military basing rights. As he spoke, his phone buzzed with messages from Western capitals, demands for clarification, thinly veiled threats, expressions of concern. He ignored them all. Instead, he sent a single message to the number that had originally sent him the encrypted files. Thank you. The response came immediately. Africa United cannot be defeated. That evening, as he sat with Amara on the palace balcony watching the sunset over Mabu, he asked the question that had been on his mind. Was it you? The files, the message? She smiled enigmatically. A president's wife hears things, sees things. People speak freely in front of me, assuming I'm just decoration. Why not tell me directly? Would you have listened, or would you have dismissed it as my usual criticism? She took his hand. You needed to see the truth with your own eyes. The following months were tumultuous. As predicted, Western powers responded. With economic pressure, loans were suspended, banking channels, restricted, media narratives turned hostile, but two things sustained Nyambe through this period. First, the response from his people, a groundswell of support unlike anything he had experienced. For the first time, he felt like a true leader, not a figurehead. Second, the alliance with Burkina Faso, which quickly expanded to include Mali, Niger, and Guinea. All nations taking similar steps toward resource sovereignty. The economic partnership developed rapidly. Zambesi's diamond expertise complemented Burkina Faso's gold production. Mali's agricultural potential paired with Niger's uranium resources. Together, they created leverage that no single African nation could achieve alone. 6 months after the hunting lodge meeting, Nyambe and Traoré stood together at the signing of the West African Resource Alliance, a formal economic and security partnership that many analysts would later identify as the beginning of a transformed Africa. As cameras flashed and officials applauded, Traoré leaned over to whisper to Nyambe, "The West once called you their most reliable African leader. What do you think they call you now?" Nyambe smiled. "I don't care what they call me for the first time. I'm answering to my people, not to foreign powers, and how does that feel? No longer hollow." Nyambe replied finally, whole, in capitals across Europe and America. Intelligence analysts and policy experts gathered to assess the new alliance forming in West Africa. Their conclusions were uniformly alarming. Resource nationalism was spreading, influence was waning, traditional methods of control were failing. "How did we lose?" Nyambe demanded a French minister in a closed-door session. He was completely reliable for years. The intelligence chief had no satisfactory answer. Something changed in him. Perhaps Traoré's influence. Perhaps internal pressure. What none of them understood, what they couldn't understand from their perspective of entitled control, was the simplest explanation. Gabriel Nyambe had awakened to his own dignity, to his responsibility toward his people and continent. The puppet had found his voice, and all across Africa, other leaders were listening. Music